In this year's Hall of Fame class, and great friends, people I respect and admire, Ray Allen and Jason Kidd.
At 52, Grant Hill remains one of the most respected figures the NBA has ever produced. There is something unmistakable about him: the calm voice, the composed posture, the way he carries himself like someone who never needed trash talk to prove anything. Even today, when he appears on television or walks into an arena, players and fans respond with the same reaction they had in the 90s. They know they are looking at a man who once stood at the center of the league's future. His resume explains why. Grant Hill entered the NBA and took over immediately. Rookie of the Year, 7-time All-Star, multiple All-NBA selections, a triple-double threat in every game he played. In an era full of physical forwards and aggressive scorers, he stood out as one of the most complete players in the entire league. He could run an offense like a point guard, score from anywhere inside the arc, rebound at a high level, and defend multiple positions without breaking rhythm. His fundamentals were strong, his decisions were clean, and his style of play was so smooth that analysts across the country began calling him something bold: the natural heir to Michael Jordan. Not because he played like Jordan, but because he represented the same all-around excellence and the same professional standard. Yet the real contrast that made Hill fascinating was his personality. He was polite in a league full of loud voices. He was thoughtful, well-spoken, and patient in a decade built on swagger and intimidation. He never needed to dominate a room to dominate a matchup, but that does not mean he avoided conflict. The truth is simple. Grant Hill faced opponents who forced him to elevate everything: strength, IQ, pace, focus. He remembered every name that challenged him, every defender who cut off his angles, every scorer who pushed him into foul trouble, every star who made him sharpen a different part of his game. To understand the 5 players he respected the most, the ones who truly tested him, we start with the man himself. Before we break down the list, we need to understand who he was and why opponents feared him. Grant Hill's story begins long before the highlights and the All-Star selections. He grew up in a disciplined household where education, character, and responsibility were treated as non-negotiable standards. His father was an NFL player. His mother was a government attorney. Expectations were high, but pressure never defined him. Instead, he learned to carry himself with balance and maturity qualities that would later make him one of the most respected young stars the league had ever seen. Before reaching the NBA, Hill became a national figure at Duke University. He was not just talented, he was polished. Smart decision-making, reliable mid-range scoring, unselfish passing, strong defensive instincts. He helped Duke win championships and earned the reputation of a player who could impact the game in every category without losing control. College coaches described him as a leader who understood tempo better than players older than him. Scouts described him as a complete forward in an era that rarely produced them. Fans saw him as poised and steady, even when the pressure surrounding Duke basketball was at its peak. When he entered the league with Detroit, the response was immediate. Hill played with a smooth confidence that made veterans take notice. He could attack the rim with balance. He could run the offense through the high post. He could rebound in traffic and still find the open man at the other end. More importantly, he played with a professionalism that stood out in the 90s, a decade known for intensity and strong personalities. You could not shake him. You could not rush him. You could not bait him into bad decisions. Grant Hill was the definition of a composed competitor. Understanding this foundation is important because it explains why certain opponents earned his respect. These were not ordinary matchups. These were players who forced him to think faster and play sharper every time they shared the floor. Number 5, Scottie Pippen. For Grant Hill, this matchup represented a masterclass in how elite wings survive in the NBA. Pippen was not only a star of the Chicago Bulls, he was the most complete perimeter defender of the decade, a player who controlled games without raising his voice or hunting the spotlight. His length, footwork, anticipation, and discipline created a level of pressure young forwards rarely experienced. When Hill entered the league, he quickly learned that facing Pippen was a different challenge from anything he had seen at Duke or during his rookie season. From their very first meeting, Hill felt the pace of the game tighten. Pippen dictated the angles. He moved his feet with a precision that erased driving lanes before they opened. When Hill approached the left elbow, Pippen was already positioned to force him away from his comfort zone. When Hill shifted his weight to attack baseline, Pippen stayed balanced and forced a reset. Each possession felt like a puzzle with fewer usable pieces than usual. Hill was used to reading defenders. Pippen was reading him. One game in Detroit captured the dynamic perfectly. Hill used a screen to slip into the high post and created what looked like a clear window for a mid-range jumper. Pippen fought through the screen, recovered in 2 strides, and contested the shot without losing stability. Hill made the jumper, but the possession stayed in his mind. It showed that Pippen would not allow him to settle or repeat the same move twice. Every detail had to be sharper. Hill did strike back in moments that earned Pippen's respect. In a later matchup, Hill used a sudden hesitation to freeze Chicago's weak side help and glided to the rim before Pippen could rotate. When the play ended, Pippen gave Hill a brief nod. It was not emotional, but it was meaningful. Pippen rarely acknowledged young players. When he did, it was because they solved something most players could not. What separated Pippen from other defenders was not just athletic ability. It was his control. He never chased a steal. He never jumped out of position. He forced opponents into the exact spots he wanted, then used his length to close off the next option. Hill often said that Pippen made him a smarter offensive player. To beat him, Hill had to vary his pace, use his shoulders to protect the ball, and rely more on angles than speed. The matchup pushed Hill to evolve his game with precision rather than aggression. This rivalry also carried symbolic meaning. Analysts compared Hill to Michael Jordan because of his all-around skill and professionalism. But inside NBA circles, the true test for a complete forward was Scottie Pippen. If you wanted to be taken seriously at that position during the 90s, you had to hold your own against him. For Grant Hill, facing Scottie Pippen was not just a battle. It was a blueprint. The matchup sharpened his mind, improved his fundamentals, and strengthened his identity as an all-around forward. That respect was earned, not given. Number 4. Reggie Miller. If Scottie Pippen challenged Grant Hill's decision-making, then Reggie Miller challenged his composure. Miller was the face of Indiana's relentless competitive spirit, a player who never backed down from pressure and never allowed opponents to relax. He was not the strongest or the fastest guard of the 90s, but he mastered something just as powerful: timing, movement, and the ability to break a defender's focus with a single cut or a single word. Grant Hill entered the league with a reputation for being calm and controlled. Most players respected that. Reggie Miller tested it. Early in their matchups, Hill discovered that guarding Miller required more than athletic ability. It demanded constant awareness. Miller did not wait for the ball. He created his own openings by sprinting off screens, planting his feet at impossible angles, and firing from deep before defenders could reset their balance. Hill needed every bit of his basketball IQ to track him. One game in Indiana highlighted Miller's influence on Hill. Detroit tried to disrupt Miller by switching coverages, but Hill ended up guarding him during a crucial sequence in the fourth quarter. Miller curled off a screen and launched a three-pointer before Hill could even extend his arm. The shot dropped, and the crowd erupted. Hill looked at the bench and nodded, because he understood exactly what happened. A half-second of hesitation was all Miller needed. That play became a reminder that defending Miller meant preparing with the intensity of a full game, even when he was away from the ball. But Hill was not overwhelmed. In a later meeting, he turned the tables. With Indiana trying to get Miller free on a double screen, Hill anticipated the cut, slipped through the traffic, and met Miller at the catch point. He deflected the pass cleanly and took the possession the other way. It was a rare moment when someone disrupted Miller's rhythm, and Miller reacted with the same kind of respect Pippen had shown earlier. A short look, a slight nod, an acknowledgement that Hill understood the craft behind the chaos. What Hill admired most about Miller was not the shooting. It was the competitive mentality. Miller played with conviction, whether he was hitting shots or missing them. He managed to shift momentum without touching the ball for entire possessions. He pressured defenses simply by existing on the floor. That level of impact forced Hill to improve his concentration and endurance. Guarding Miller required total accountability every second. For Hill, the respect came from understanding how much mental energy it took to match Miller's intensity. Few players controlled the emotional flow of a game the way Miller did. Hill learned that staying composed in those moments was not only a skill, it was a necessity. Reggie Miller did not just test Hill's defense, he tested his poise, and that pressure shaped a major part of Hill's growth as a competitor. Number 3. Jason Kidd. If there was one opponent who forced Grant Hill to think faster than he ever imagined, it was Jason Kidd. Kidd was not just a point guard with great athletic ability. He was a tempo controller, a player who could turn a routine possession into a sprint and then slow the next one down to a crawl. His mind operated at a higher speed than almost anyone in the league. When Hill faced him, he was not just defending a player, he was defending a system. From the first minutes of their early matchups, Hill understood how disruptive Kidd could be. Whenever Kidd grabbed a rebound, the energy in the building shifted. He pushed the ball with strength and confidence, scanning the floor while moving at full speed. Hill had to react instantly because Kidd punished the smallest delay. If Hill took one extra step in the wrong direction, Kidd would fire a pass to an open shooter. If Hill overplayed the drive, Kidd used his size and patience to glide into the paint and create scoring chances for his teammates. One game in Phoenix illustrated this perfectly. Hill closed out on a shooter, thinking he had forced a rushed pass. Instead, Kidd snapped the ball across the court to a wide-open teammate before Hill could even plant his foot for a recovery. The pass arrived with perfect timing and the shot went in. Hill turned to his bench with a slight shake of the head, not out of frustration but out of recognition. Kidd had processed the entire defense in a split second. But their matchups did not go in only one direction. Hill found ways to disrupt Kidd too. In a memorable possession against Dallas, Hill anticipated Kidd's push up the sideline and stepped into the passing lane. Kidd tried to adjust with a quick crossover, but Hill slid into position, used his length and forced a turnover. It was the kind of play that only happened when two players who understood the game on a deeper level met at the same moment. Kidd looked back at Hill with a small smile, acknowledging that the read was sharp. What separated Kidd from most guards was how he affected players physically and mentally. He played with a constant pressure that never eased. Even when he was not scoring, he controlled spacing. He manipulated defenders with his eyes. He dictated which direction a defender's feet needed to move. Hill often said that playing against Kidd felt like playing chess at full speed. Every movement had meaning. Every reaction created consequences. Hill respected Kidd because he felt himself improve through every matchup. Guarding him forced Hill to stay alert in transition and sharpen his instincts as an off-ball defender. Kidd made him understand the value of anticipation, not just effort. The challenge was not simply stopping Kidd. It was staying connected to him mentally for every possession. For Grant Hill, Jason Kidd represented the ultimate test of awareness. He demanded precision, intelligence, and full commitment. And in that constant pressure, Hill found a deeper level of respect. Number 2. Michael Jordan. For Grant Hill, this matchup was never about hype or comparisons. It was about facing the ultimate competitor of the era. Jordan was more than a scorer. He controlled games through mentality, physical strength, and a level of precision that made mistakes feel unforgivable. Hill entered the league as the next great all-around forward, and many analysts pointed to him as the natural successor to Jordan. But inside the arena, Hill understood something very different. To be taken seriously in the 90s, you had to face Jordan head-on. From their first encounter, Hill felt the difference in Jordan's presence. Every possession carried weight. Jordan used his body to direct the flow of the matchup. When Hill attacked, Jordan guided him into crowded areas, forcing him to make decisions earlier than he wanted. When Hill tried to use his smooth mid-range game, Jordan adjusted the spacing and challenged the release point. It was not intimidation. It was mastery. There was a game in Chicago that stayed with Hill for years. Hill caught the ball in the mid-post, used a sharp pivot, and created enough space to lift a clean jumper. He knocked it down confidently. On the next possession, Jordan asked for the ball on the block, backed his defender down, and responded with the same shot from the same spot. It was not a message filled with emotion. It was a reminder that greatness required consistency at the highest level. Hill respected that more than anything else. Hill also learned how disciplined Jordan was on defense. Jordan never gambled. He forced Hill to use every piece of footwork he had. When Hill tried to shift directions, Jordan slid with patience. When Hill sped up, Jordan stayed balanced. When Hill slowed the tempo, Jordan challenged his timing. Few defenders in the league had the ability to disrupt rhythm without reaching or lunging. Jordan did it naturally. What made the matchup especially meaningful was how Jordan treated Hill. There was respect from the beginning. Jordan recognized Hill's intelligence and versatility. He tested him with physical strength but also with advanced reads. Hill often said that Jordan pushed him to value preparation more than talent. To beat Jordan for even a single possession, you needed to think clearly, stay composed, and execute without hesitation. Their battles were not hostile. They were professional. Jordan knew Hill was a threat who could impact games in multiple ways. Hill knew Jordan represented the highest possible standard. The physical demands were obvious, but the mental demands were even greater. For Grant Hill, facing Michael Jordan was the reality check that defined elite competition. It showed him that greatness was not only about skill, it was about stamina, detail, and the courage to match the best player of the era possession after possession. That respect was earned, not given. Number 1, Kobe Bryant. For Grant Hill, no opponent captured the full meaning of respect more completely than Kobe. This was not a rivalry built on age or draft position. It was built on intensity. Kobe played the game with a level of commitment that never dropped. Hill admired that because he understood how hard it was to maintain that kind of focus night after night. When they faced each other, the battle was never casual. It felt like an examination of skill preparation and personal pride. Their timelines crossed at an important moment. Hill was already a star in Detroit before injuries altered his path. Kobe was the rising force in Los Angeles, a player who chased excellence with absolute conviction. When Hill returned later in his career with Phoenix, many players softened with age. Kobe did not, and that became the heart of their respect. Hill was older, more experienced, and more calculated. Kobe was relentless, strong, and aggressive in both mindset and technique. The contrast created matchups that still stand out years later. One meeting in particular showed Hill the full weight of Kobe's intensity. Early in the first quarter, Kobe caught the ball on the wing and drove hard into the mid-post. Hill stayed in front using his size and balance to cut off the first angle. Kobe responded by pivoting, leaning into Hill's chest, and rising for a tough fadeaway that dropped cleanly through the net. Hill did everything right. Kobe still found the shot. It was the kind of possession that explained why players around the league considered Kobe a mental challenge as much as a physical one. But Hill never backed away. Later in the same game, he anticipated Kobe's spin move on the baseline and slid into position a half step early. He contested the shot cleanly and forced a miss. Kobe looked at Hill with a calm expression that communicated something subtle. A real competitor appreciates someone who studies tendencies and meets the moment with confidence. Hill respected Kobe for demanding that level of preparation. Kobe respected Hill for delivering it. What made Kobe stand above the rest in Hill's eyes was the complete package. The footwork, the conditioning, the understanding of spacing, the ability to score under pressure, and the refusal to let energy drop at any point. Hill often said that guarding Kobe required a different kind of endurance. You could not relax for even a single possession. One slow step, one late contest, one moment of hesitation. Kobe would punish every mistake. Their matchups became a dialogue between two professionals who valued the game deeply. Hill used intelligence, timing, and experience to challenge Kobe. Kobe used determination and precision to push Hill to the edge. The respect was mutual and unquestioned. For Grant Hill, Kobe Bryant represented the purest form of competitive fire. He demanded excellence from everyone who stood in front of him, and Hill valued that more than anything. That respect was earned, not given. Grant Hill's list tells a clear story about the kind of competitor he was. These 5 players were not chosen because of highlight moments or dramatic confrontations. They were chosen because each one pushed him to reach a higher level of discipline, intelligence, and focus. Scottie Pippen challenged his decision-making and forced him to sharpen every detail of his offensive game. Reggie Miller tested his composure and taught him the value of constant awareness. Jason Kidd confronted him with a mind that moved at top speed and demanded quicker reactions. Michael Jordan showed him the standard required to compete with the greatest. And Kobe Bryant represented the full weight of competitive fire, the kind that requires complete preparation and absolute commitment. Together, these names reflect the essence of Grant Hill's career. He was a complete forward who valued professionalism, intelligence, and respect. He never relied on trash talk or theatrics. He relied on skill and composure. That is why these matchups left such a lasting impression on him. Each opponent exposed a different challenge. Each one added something to his identity. and each one helped define the player who was once viewed as the natural successor to the icons of the 90s. Hill's journey is often remembered for the obstacles he faced, especially the injuries that interrupted his prime, but his respect for these opponents shows something deeper. He understood the game at a level that only true students of basketball ever reach. He recognized greatness when he saw it, and he embraced the pressure of competing against the best. Now it is your turn. Who would make your list of the most respected players from the 90s and 2000s? Tell us in the comments and let your voice be part of the conversation.